Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, and I'll be here talking about some interesting stories that happened this week. We have Lolly Tolentino coming out here in a few minutes to talk about the things that are on your mind, some of the interesting questions that you sent in this week. But first, people in the Philippines are always asking me if they can sue someone if they said something bad about them, such as my friend on Facebook said I had sex with her boyfriend, but I didn't, and I want to sue her for 10 million pesos. These kind of cases are very tricky to take to court because you need to show that because of what a person wrote or said, they can cause you to lose that much, or that you had the potential to make that much, and now you can't because of what they said. Which brings us to what could be of the most shared clips of a court case that I have ever seen, and that would be the defamation suit of Johnny Depp versus his wife Amber Heard, in which he sued her for $50 million for lying about him. Now, that was not the only case that was going on in the courtroom. Amber Heard was also countersuing Johnny Depp for $100 million, saying that his lawyer lied about her lying about him, Johnny Depp. So these two movie stars in this publicly broadcasted trial turned out to be in an incredibly toxic relationship. They probably should have never been married in the first place. But now they've got a chance to spill the worst possible parts of each other before our very eyes. It almost seemed as if they were practicing for this courtroom drama for years, each one secretly taping the other years ago in order to one day prove their case in court. But in case you've not been following this monster of a social media story, it all started when Amber Heard, Depp's ex-wife and star of Aquaman, decided to post a 2018 article in the Washington Post talking about how she was abused by someone unnamed that she said makes her now a public figure to represent women of abuse. She never named Johnny Depp, but, we all knew what she meant. So the word quickly spread of the assumption that Depp was a wife beater or abuser of women who gets away with it because he's just too famous. Now, Depp is loved by millions of people because of his movies, The Pirates in the Caribbean, which Disney shelved because Depp was now deemed a wife beater. Well, Depp makes a lot of money for those movies, and now that income, most of his other projects, are gone based on what Amber said. So he sued her. He said he's suing her to get his life back. But as the trial got underway, I guess we never knew what gruesome and bizarre details that might come pouring out. But it turns out it's very true that real life is much more believable than maybe what might be in a movie. I mean, there was drugs and alcohol-induced rages, a finger cut off with a smashed bottle, someone pooping in the bed, a melange of weird testimonies from some big Hollywood stars and some just really odd people. And the memes, oh my God, some of the best memes in the history of memeing. But it all came down to this week, the verdict. Who did they believe, the man or the woman? And how much money will one have to pay the other? Well, okay, it was kind of a semi-lukewarm verdict with Johnny getting $15 million and Amber getting $2 million, even though I believe the cap in the state of Virginia is $350,000 on punitive damage. But it never really was about the money, was it? It was really about a woman claiming that a man beat her when in reality it seemed like he didn't. This has always been a possibility with all these cases coming out in the past few years. Big Hollywood stars able to get away with this stuff just because they are famous. And remember, this happened in 2018 during the time when a lot of these Me Too cases were coming up and mega Hollywood giants were coming out as the monsters. But the question here is, what if a woman was the real monster? What if the man was innocent and the woman was making up a story just to get attention and maybe help her career in some way? What recourse does a man really have once it's all out? Does he have to just make an apology statement and hope that he doesn't get canceled? Well, Johnny Depp said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby or Donald Trump. I would never do that, and I'm suing to make sure the world knows it. We got to see it all play out in full living color and detail. So as Amber Heard tried to be part of the Me Too movement, Johnny Depp started his own movement, the It Wasn't Me movement. And he won his case, and he got his life back. Many of us are happy to see that, because what on earth would we do without just one more Pirates of the Caribbean movie? This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. We got Lolly Tolentino coming up in just a moment. So, as you know, the U.S. has been having some trouble with mass murders. Even had one big one a few days ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And of course, the two major mass murders in Texas and New York that happened last week within days of each other, not to mention the 200 plus others that have happened this year. And people keep asking why. Why is this happening in America? And what are we going to do about it? Now, most of the people in the U.S. believe that the reason for gun violence in the U.S. is because there are simply too many guns. And the gun laws in the U.S. are generally stupid. Some states say you don't even need a license to carry a gun. You don't even need any kind of background check. You can be 18 and buy a military assault rifle, and you can give away your gun or sell your gun to anyone. There's no record of that transaction. At 16, you can buy cigarettes, or you can't buy cigarettes or beer, but you can walk into a gun show and buy a gun. So long, nothing has happened in the U.S. in changing these obvious dumb laws. The politicians have argued, and people have protested in front of the Capitol, and TV talk shows have screamed at each other over, but nothing happens. But this week, something did happen. Because of all the gun violence in the U.S., the Canadian Prime Minister came out and said that they have been watching the U.S. lately, and they don't want what's happening in the U.S. to happen in Canada, so they are putting a ban on buying all handguns and military assault rifles, and are even allowing people to sell the government their guns back to them. So what the U.S. has not been able to do in decades, Canada was able to, hey, we don't have a lot of mass murders in Canada like in the U.S., but why risk it even happening here? So let's enact smart gun laws. They just did it. They didn't really talk about it much, just like in New Zealand. They just did it. So, many of you are asking, why won't Americans do the same thing? I mean, if there's so much proof that the policies work and will stop mass murders, why doesn't America want to have sensible gun laws? The answer is most Americans do. In fact, a huge part of the country really does. But the few Americans that don't want any gun laws or actually want more guns in the country are very powerful people. And of these people, what is their excuse for why the U.S. should be different than the rest of the world and continue on the path it's on of weekly mass murders? Well, according to them, the first and foremost in the U.S. is that even though they have more guns in the country than anywhere else in the world, it's not the guns. It's not the reason that there's so much violence. It's not the guns. It was never fault of the guns. It's the fault of society, according to them. It's the fault of the internet and movies and video games. All these things that are made today, it's the violence of them that is inflicting upon our youth. That these days our kids can't tell the difference between what is real and what is fantasy. Now, of course, the question is you have to ask, doesn't the rest of the world play the same internet, have the same movies, the same games? How come they're not as affected as the U.S. is? However, how is it that they can tell the difference between shooting in a video game and shooting in real life? And honestly, music of today, it's just as violent as it was in my time. I mean, Didn't the Beatles song Helter Skelter tell Charles Manson to kill all those people in the 70s? And ironically, wasn't the book Catcher in the Rye blamed for John Lennon's death? Many Republicans are saying that the problem of guns is because there's not enough religion in our lives, that school needs religion back into the curriculum. Okay. I mean, no offense, but weren't more people killed throughout history for religious beliefs than any other reason? I don't know. Speaking of what's taught in schools, some politicians are blaming the new modern curriculum in schools, that critical race theory. That's the reason for all this violence. But hasn't that been a new issue recently? Mass shootings in the U.S. have been a problem for the last, 30 plus years? It just seems funny to me that they come up with so many reasons for all these shootings, but it's never the guns themselves. When you say, why don't we just stop selling assault weapons to 18-year-olds? Maybe that'll help the situation. No. The real problem is we don't have enough guns. Senator of Texas said we need more guns. We need armed policemen in every school in America. But honestly, in the shooting in the school in Texas, they actually had an armed policeman on site, and he was so scared to engage because the young boy had an AR-15 assault weapon. In fact, the squadron of police didn't even go into the school for 40 minutes after the gunman because they were worried about their own safety. Donald Trump wants to arm teachers in the schools, saying the best defense against bad people with guns is good people with guns. I mean, if one kid in school throws a rock, do we give all the good kids rocks? They keep saying, well, if we took the guns away, people would still find a way to kill people. Yes, that's true, but high-powered weapons just makes it so much easier, makes it much faster, much more efficient. Saying that get rid of guns will not make a difference in whether mass murder is being committed is, well, logically, it's just wrong. And saying it's impossible to get rid of guns, it's just as wrong because in Canada, they are doing it. And I bet you any money that the number of shootings in Canada goes way down because of it. Just like everywhere else in the world. I mean, just saying that in the U.S., no one is going to die because we take away their AR-15 assault rifle away from them. But if we let them keep it, if we let them buy more assault rifles, someone could very well die. Actually, probably someone will die. This is Eric Lecain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio. Lolly Tolentino will be up here in just a moment, so please stick around. We're going to answer your questions. See you in just a moment. Hello, Philippines, and welcome back to the World News Jam here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, and I am joined with the wonderful Lolly Tolentino, who will be here to ask some of the questions and read some of the questions that you have sent in this week. So, Lolly Tolentino, welcome. How are you doing this beautiful Sunday?
Beautiful, Eric. It's a beautiful Sunday, a challenging day, but you know what? Life must go on. All right.
Very, very challenging day indeed, Lolly Tolentino. Now, Lolly, you have gotten a lot of questions, I know, from our viewers this week. So why don't we go ahead and take a big dive into this swimming pool full of questions and see what our discussion leads to.
All right. Let's start with OG of Las Piñas. What happened to Nigeria church event and killed more than 30 people, and why in church?
Oh my goodness, this is such a sad story. You know, in Nigeria, they do a lot of these outreach programs where they give away free food and free gifts. And they were having one this past week, and they put up a fence to kind of keep people from rushing into the church, and people got a little impatient, and they're very hungry in Nigeria because it's a very impoverished nation. It's one of the most impoverished countries in Africa. and they could see, in the distance, all the free food, and there were so many people coming, and they just knocked down the fence and they just rushed in, and 31 people got trampled.
That is very sad. I mean, I don't know how come they cannot fix it.
A lot of and the problem is when these things happen and people get trampled to death, it's mostly kids. The kids that are there, and they get run over. And this is not the first time, Lolly, this has happened in Nigeria. Back in 2011, 12 people died there in a political rally. There was in 2013 where a whole bunch of people died when they were giving out free holy water. And then again at a religious vigil, also in the same year, 28 people lost their lives. 200 people were injured in a religious event. And then again, they had another problem where they were offering jobs to work at immigration. And they had 4,000 jobs, and 1 million people showed up, and they stampeded in to try and see who could be the first one to get the job. And 24 people lost their lives on that day. So in Nigeria, they seem to have a problem with stampedes.
Wow. They should learn how to fix this kind of problem, because if it is a regular thing, it's a matter of organization. I think they have to organize how to handle this, thing.
Yeah,
avoid
usually you hear about these things at rock concerts and, political rallies and things like this. And it's so sad when it's, a religious function where they're just trying to do something good. They're trying to give away free food to, people who are hungry, and they end up having, some issues. And, a lot of it comes down to like how the guards handle the crowds and so forth. And then they just let them just come in all at once. And when they come in at once, everybody wants to be first. And some people get stuck in the, underneath, and they get trampled.
Okay, well, I think they need us to help them organize to do this. I am good at it. Anyway.
Let me see if we can get Lolly Tolentino out to Nigeria to see if we can get her to help the Nigerian people with their stampedes.
I'll be Miss Nigeria when I get there. Anyway, let's go to Mila of California. President Biden and Saudi Crown Prince planning to meet up this month. Any clue what for?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious what this is for, and it is oil. Last week we were talking on the show about the price of oil and how the price of gas is like getting ridiculous. And I think, this is one of the things that they need to do. One of the only ways that Saudi Arabia has clout in the world at all anyway is because they're sitting on so much oil. And during the pandemic, their oil was not worth very much because no one was driving, no planes were flying, no factories were running. So the Saudis lost tons of money during that time. And so for now, they're trying to make that money back. And the best way to make that money back is to drive up the price of oil. And the only way to do that is not make enough. And so each barrel of oil is worth more. And so the U.S. has been trying to push the Arabs to see if they can pump more oil, to see if they can stabilize the price a little bit. And the Arabs have not been cooperative because they like the high price of oil. It's $120 a barrel.
Wow.
I guess if I owned the oil, I would like it to be $120 a barrel instead of 35 or whatever it was. It went down to 32 at one point. So this is a blessing for the Gulf economies, but it's killing the rest of us because, gas is just...
It's good for the
gas is off the scale right now. So supposedly, Biden is there. He's been trying to work out a deal with the king of Saudi Arabia to pump another 200,000 more barrels of oil a day to see if he can help offset the price a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Saudi prince will agree?
Well, notice that I said the king. I did not say the prince.
Oh, the king. All right.
Because the prince and Biden do not get along that well. They're not so chummy because Biden has been very, very critical of the prince because of things like beheading people and the war in Yemen and killing that journalist Khashoggi. The prince's human rights record is not something to look at. And so he actually called the prince a pariah one time. So he's been kind of going around the prince and going directly to the king, although the king really does not have much to do with day-to-day operations in Saudi Arabia because he's like 80 plus years old. And so the prince has been doing it. So now it's how can we work out a deal with the king and get the prince to go along with it? Because, we don't know when this war is going to end in the Ukraine. And the two biggest producers of oil, it used to be the United States was the biggest producer of oil. And then after the pandemic, they can't get things back together. They can't get the oil turned on again. So it's been Russia and Saudi Arabia. And since they're trying to isolate Russia, and since the European Union has said last week that they are going to try and cut off the importing of oil from Russia, really everybody's going to have to start looking at Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or some of these places. And the United States and Saudi Arabia have always been on funny ground. I mean, when Trump was involved there, he and the prince were best buddies. But before that, and now after that, the September 11 attacks are still in the minds of a lot of Americans. And most of the guys that were on those planes in September 11th were Saudis. And there's been a lot of issues with them. And so now they need to delicately see if they can work out a deal with the Saudis about oil. Because for the longest time, I don't want to go on and on about this, the United States has been slowly weaning itself off of OPEC oil, mostly by pumping its own oil and building pipelines and so forth to make themselves self-sufficient with the oil. But now that's not the case. And so now they need the Saudis to do this. And I think that's what this meeting is about, to see if they can get them to pump a little more oil and see if we can get the price of gas down.
Okay, I hope, that meeting would really work for the benefit of everyone.
I know. There's got to be some kind of medium that they can have there, because they are not going to go back to Russia. I think Russia is done. As soon as the European Union cuts them off, I don't know what's going to happen with, Russia oil is they're going to have to start pumping it into China because they got nobody to sell it to. So, everybody's going to be looking at OPEC to offset that challenge of where the oil is coming from until the United States can get their act together on their own oil pumps.
Yeah, I'll join President Biden. All right.
Come on. Work it out, guys.
Yes. Let's go to Ina of Pasay. I watched your show last week, and you predicted there will be one next. This is the shooting, right? So another one again this week. Can you predict when this shooting will stop in America? This is too much.
Okay, the last part of that question was correct. This is too much. Very interesting question. Last week I predicted, just offhand that, there's so many mass shootings that there's going to be one next week, I bet you. And next week there was not a mass shooting, there was 14. 14 mass shootings happened in the United States last week. Actually, they happened on Memorial Day weekend between Friday night and Monday night, Tuesday morning. They had 14 mass shootings. And, people think, I'm exaggerating. But a mass shooting is defined as a shooting where 4 or more people get shot, not including the gunman. And there was that many of those in a weekend. In fact, if you don't include those, if you just look at the people that got shot by a gun and killed in Memorial Day weekend, it was 156.
Wow.
And 412 people got injured by guns in that weekend. That's just Friday night to Tuesday morning in Tennessee and South Carolina and Philadelphia. And this is just after the shooting in Texas, which happened on May 24th. So after May 24th, 3 days later, May 27th to May 31st, 156 people died from a gunshot wound in the United States. It just seems impossible. So I guess the question is, what is the United States doing about it? And the answer is not much.
Yeah, because I don't understand really. But anyway,
It is
okay.
really hard to understand because, and the reason it's so hard to understand is because the majority of people in the United States are screaming for gun laws to change, and they have been for decades. But the minority still hold the key to having anything change. And the minority, Republicans, the right-wing Republicans, they keep screaming about that Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment is part of the Constitution that says that every American has the right to own a gun. However, that was written in 1786. Back
Wow,
when
1786. Today is already 2022, man. I
I
mean,
know it's a little it's a little late. And in 1786, there were very few guns. They were hard to get. The houses were very, very far apart. There was no police force, and the United States was not united. Many states were against each other. And people would come from one state into another, and these militias were fighting each other. So everyone was allowed to have a gun. But we have a police department now, and the United States is kind of united.
yeah.
You can drive from one state to the other. There's not an issue. Houses are very close together. We don't have the same problems that we did before. Back then it took 2 minutes to load one bullet. Now we have semi-automatic rifles, which can be upgraded to automatic rifles. And so I think if the forefathers who were writing the Constitution were alive now, they would not be saying every American has the right to own a gun.
Yeah.
Because
I
there
hope
is no reason. There is no reason for people to own military assault rifles.
I hope they will come back and tell these guys to, you better make up your mind. Anyway,
I know if we could just bring the forefathers who wrote the Constitution back to life and have them, what I bet if they came back to life and they spoke out on YouTube and said, we need to rewrite the Constitution. People go, oh no, we need our guns. I think they would argue. The Republicans would argue with them anyway. So I wish that I had a better answer. I got a bad feeling that it's only going to get worse. I don't want to predict that there'll be a mass shooting by next week, but I have a bad feeling.
okay. I rebuke that feeling, Eric. Okay. Let's go to Anna Batangas. All right. This is connected to this question. Will there be a chance the gun law in U.S. will change to avoid the shooting? And how many more will die before your politician could make up something good for America?
Okay, let's get into this question about the law. There are many different gun laws that they're pushing for. Now, a lot of these gun laws deal with background checks. If they were able to get this law passed about the background checks that they've been trying to pass, it would have made absolutely no difference at all in the New York shooting or the Texas shooting, because both of those guys they were 18 years old. They didn't have, they had not been incarcerated before. They didn't have a prison record. They didn't have any questionable mental health issues. They were able to just walk in and buy that rifle. And so that particular law that they're trying to pass now would have really made very little difference. The laws they have about changing the age. Yes, that is a great law. Move it up to 21. You can't, move it up to the age where you can't buy beer before you're 21, but you can buy an assault weapon. In fact, you can't buy cigarettes at 16 in the United States. However, you can walk into a gun show and buy a gun. I think I talked about this a little earlier. So, it's just insane. And I think the best way to do this is go back to banning assault weapons. In the United States during the Clinton presidency, there was a ban on assault weapons. You couldn't buy them. You couldn't sell them. And then that ban ran out. And when it ran out, they should have, redone it. But the Republicans stepped in and said, no, we need our military style AR-15 assault weapons for whatever reason. And now they can sell them. And now they can sell them to an 18-year-old. An 18-year-old does not have the maturity. I don't care if he has a prison record or not. He doesn't have the maturity to own a weapon like that. I mean, when you're 18, you're impulsive. Your girlfriend, you see your girlfriend with another guy, and you're mad, I'm going to kill him, and you go home and get your gun, and you go out and you shoot him. you're not able to think that straight at 18, and I don't believe that you should own a gun. I don't think that, I don't think they should be able to sell guns, especially being able to carry a gun without a license. Doesn't that seem crazy? That you can carry a pistol without a license in the state
I
of
don't
Texas?
know. Again, my question again is, all these things happening in America, and because of too much freedom in America, you can do anything, everything, and this is, for me, this is really insane, because now I think they have to look at the, what is happening. There's a lot of killing everywhere, and there's so many things to do. Your law, everything. The politician, because they're the lawmakers, so they have to, and they're the one that breaks the law.
What is the purpose of you being a politician? Is to help us, to make our lives better. Isn't that your job, to make our lives better? And saying that we need more guns. When this shooting happened in Texas, where all these children were killed, many of the Republicans came out and said, we need more guns. That's the problem.
Oh my God.
We need more guns in the hands of the teachers, in the hands of the parents, in the hands of the good people that have the gun. That's the answer. I think that is probably the worst possible solution for a bad problem that you could come up with, Republicans. I think, Lolly, you need to go talk to the Senator Ted Cruz of Texas.
Oh my God. Ted Cruz, what's wrong with you? And you know what? I thought we talked about this last week again, right? Because of this, like I said, how can you give a gun to, let's say, a teacher? Before you can even fire a gun, it takes, practice. You need to have discipline. There's so many things to consider, and now you're giving a gun to an 18-year-old. That's absolutely insane.
The fact that they want to give the guns to the teachers, and then in this particular incident in Texas, the police were scared to go in because the guy had an AR-15, and they're trained. They're trained guys with guns,
exactly.
And they were scared to go in. And so, what do you think a teacher is going to do?
Exactly. Especially, it takes a lot of courage to, and training just to have one gun in your hand. But anyway,
I know.
Okay, let's go to Tessa Pasic. A little lighter. What is your opinion? Johnny Depp won in his court battle with his ex-wife. Is that a fair trial, you think?
Yeah, well, it's something I was talking about before about, honestly, I don't, this was not really about the trial. This was about Johnny Depp's legacy. He is one of the most entertaining actors in history, and now he's known as a wife beater. And nobody's going to remember how great he was in all these movies. They're going to remember that he beat his wife. And he doesn't think, he is saying that he has never, not only has he never hit his wife, he's never hit a woman in his entire life. And this trial played out like one of his movies. He's a very lovable character. And in the trial, he came off that way, and she did not. And in the time of, Me Too, in the Me Too movement, where women are able to speak out about the abuse of men in Hollywood, and it's very serious. It's, there's a problem in Hollywood about men abusing women. The problem is what if a woman abuses that ability to be able to claim, for whatever reason, to get back at her husband or whatever reason she was doing this, but it came off looking like she was the bad person. And I think, big stars in Hollywood, they can do anything. They can drive their car at 150 miles an hour. They can snort cocaine. They can do all kinds of things because they're big stars. It's kind of the way it is. But this issue about what happened in this court trial. Now, was this trial fair? The trial was like a movie. Did you watch any of this stuff? It was just incredible to watch. It was just insane what happened in this trial. But I think the big part of this trial that the issue for him was to get his legacy back, because he's saying it ruined his life. It ruined everything that he's done.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it's about time to because most of the time it's all normally the court will always side with the women, right?
Yeah, because
But
usually the woman's right. Usually it is some husband beating her up. But in this
yeah,
particular case, I don't know.
yeah. But then I believe so, because I know there are some women who are really I don't know what's the right word to use, but then they tend to abuse the husband as well. But some of the guys, they cannot do anything. So the least that they can do is to punch her nose or whatever. But then, in all honesty, the trial should really be fair. Man or a woman, if whoever made a mistake here, it is the husband or the wife. You just give the justice for whoever. And just to be fair, I mean, it's not because she is more beautiful, she's rich or whatever, you just side with her. I don't think so. Just when you get a fair trial here, you have at least if you have a good lawyer to defend you, then everybody will understand what happened. That's my
Well, I mean, one of the issues is, I mean, of course, a man should never hit a woman because men are much stronger than women. But what happens when a woman is like beating up on a guy?
Exactly.
And this is what happened in this trial. He was like, she hit me. What am I supposed to do? She threw a bottle at me. She cut off the top of my finger. There was just so many things where it's like, what is a guy supposed to do at what limit? Now, granted, he did not come off looking as a prince in this. I mean, yes, Johnny Depp has a problem with cocaine and drinking and raging, and, he's got his own issues. And it's true, they should have never been married. I mean, they should have been divorced. There's no question about that. But at what point does a guy have to be able to, at what point can he swing back? I guess that is the question.
Yeah. Well, show everyone that you are the good guy. I think there's still time to redeem himself. So for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, he won basically. I mean, nobody really won. I mean, he got awarded $15 million. She got awarded $2 million. There's a cap in Virginia anyway of $350,000. So I don't know, on punitive damages. So I don't know how much any of them are going to get. But I don't even know if it even mattered about the money. I think most of it mattered about the fact that he got his life back, which was taken from him. He got fired from everything. Everything that he was in after this came out, this Washington Post article came out, they dumped him from every project. Nobody wanted to touch him. He was, another Harvey Weinstein. And so I think that, he's just like, I'm not going to take this lying down. I'm not going to give up on all that I have put in my entire life because this woman is lying about me.
Yeah. If I am in his shoes also, I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight. Yeah. Anyway. All right.
We may get another Pirates. We may get another Pirates of the Caribbean movie out of this trial.
Yeah, that would be. It can be a blockbuster. Anyway, let's go to Miles of Quezon City. What do you think happened after former Attorney General William Barr attended the meeting of the Committee of January 6th issue?
I don't know who out of our audience has been following this, but every week there is a new twist and turn to this thing. This is all based on the January 6th, when all the Republican Trump supporters rushed into the Capitol and tried to hang the Congress people. But William Barr, in case you don't know, we've talked about him a lot here on the show. He's the former Attorney General of the Trump administration. After Trump threw Attorney General Jeff Sessions under the bus, Barr became known as the top henchman in the Trump administration. He was like his personal lawyer, even though he was supposed to be the U.S. Attorney General. But even Barr couldn't handle Trump. Eventually, Barr was like, "All right, I can't take this anymore," and he resigned. And supposedly, when he resigned, Trump was really mad, slammed his hand down on the desk, and said, "Good riddance, get the heck out." He said another word, "Get out of here." So. Barr really had enough after all the false claims, that Trump was cheated, yada, 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 all that stuff. And Barr just didn't want to be part of that anymore. And so when this January 6th thing happened, Barr was on his way out. And so they want to question Barr and see what he knew about what was going on, and mostly what was being planned. What was being planned leading up to January 6th. And I think that's part of what they're going to be looking at from him, because he's clearly joined the club of all those guys that used to work for Trump who have now turned against him. That huge, almost the entire administration, the cabinet that was under Trump, have all turned against Trump now. And so they're all now like, let me just give you all the information that I can possibly give you, because we don't like this guy anymore. Even though Barr, stood up for Trump and did all kinds of really bad things for Trump, at the end, it was just too much for him. Now, Lolly, in case you have not been following this as much as I do, Peter Navarro, which we have talked about on the show at great length, a guy that was in the administration for Trump, was arrested this past week. They caught him at the airport. They put him in handcuffs and leg chains and took him out of the airport. This is a guy from the Trump administration. And they had subpoenaed him and said that you need to come in and talk to us, and you need to give us the documentation that you have your phones and all your emails and stuff that was sent leading up to January 6th. And he refused because, he's one of these total Trump supporters. And I think people thought that because Trump was telling everybody, do not cooperate with the January 6th committee. And I think everybody thought, well, we don't have to cooperate because Trump says we don't have to. Well, you do. You do. This whole thing about ignoring Congress is now not going to fly, because now they're arresting people, and they're arresting them in the worst places. They arrested him in the airport. He's about to get on a plane. They took him out in handcuffs and leg locks.
Well, my question here is, are there more guys going to be handcuffed?
I don't think Mark Meadows, I don't think they're going to handcuff Mark Meadows. That was the big question, is whether they were going to bring him in, force him to come in for questioning. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it could happen with several others. I think what's going to happen is guys are going to be more apt to make a deal now with the January 6th than to just completely say, okay, well, I'm not coming in. I'm ignoring the subpoenas. I think a lot of these guys that are in the Trump administration are going to think twice now about ignoring these subpoenas now that they saw what happened to Peter Navarro. And now that they know that Bill Barr is now speaking. He is now speaking to the committee, and he's probably naming people. So this is going to, we thought that this thing was wrapping up. I think this thing is just getting started.
Wow. Well, I think maybe other guys involved here will be thinking 10 times, and probably they will just surrender to the third, like, hey, this is my information. Here, this is what I have done. So just to, not to be handcuffed.
Yeah, so, when you're looking at jail time, a lot of things change. All of a sudden, a lot of things, well, I'm not going to pay any attention to these subpoenas. And all of a sudden, you're faced with jail time. It's like, okay, time to change your mind.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not going down for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do jail time for Donald Trump. Anyway.
Okay, let's go now to Mildred Upakati. Okay, this is a local question. Do you think Senator Laila de Lima be freed during Marcos' time? The senator who's been in jail.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question to answer. I've always thought that the case against de Lima was flimsy at best. The fact that a first-year senator in charge of human rights is put in jail for 5 years with no trial, basically for speaking out against the killings that were going on in the Philippines. At the same, and she's doing this at the same time the entire world is speaking out about it. She went from one day being a senator, defending young people being killed, with impunity, to being a drug dealer and being thrown in a prison cell. It seemed to me, a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but it seemed to me at the time, a clear example that if you speak out against the war on drugs, which killed a lot of people, you can be put in jail with no trial, with no evidence. And you may be in prison for 5 years without even, without a trial of any kind. Now, I know that there was testimony, but now that testimony by those witnesses, they have retracted their statements. They said that they were coerced into false testimony, that they were told by the Justice Secretary of Duterte that, they needed to say what they said and implicate De Lima, or their families would be killed, or they would be killed. Is that true? We can't say if that's true or not. Yeah. Were they coerced? We can't say. All we can do is listen to them. It just seemed odd to me at the time that they were credible, that this woman who was a senator, speaking out for the human rights, would all of a sudden be a drug kingpin in the jail, in the prison. I don't know what the right answer is here. Will she be set free anytime soon? You know what I hope they do? Because of what's surrounding this and the fact that, who is in the presidency now, I don't think they're just going to let her go scot-free. I think hopefully they will let her at least post bail. Yeah.
I think they're gonna, maybe they're gonna loosen up a little bit about, this case. Just have to, they're gonna work on it for sure. I mean, she's a lawyer. She's a former justice secretary as well. So, they know what to do. But, during this Duterte's time, of course, it's a different story. So
yeah, they were never gonna let her out during the Duterte's time. I mean, do you think? Honestly, I mean, here again, we're speculating. This is total speculation. Do you think that she was a drug dealer moving drugs and money in and out of the prison?
Honestly, of course, I don't know her personally and all that. To me, it seems I cannot believe that. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Who am I to judge? I am nobody to judge anybody for that matter. And then, if the court or, there's an evidence, whatever. So, but personally, I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the way that they did this was on the testimony of these guys. And, these guys that were very close to her. And now they're saying that they were, their families were threatened and they were coerced to say these things. And they were just looking out for themselves and looking out for their families. And now they're saying, well, and it's just funny that this comes out right at the end of Duterte's presidency. It didn't come out last year. It comes out now. And of course, the Americans have to get involved and they have to speak out and say, she should be released immediately. And she should probably be released. She's been in jail for 5 years. I mean, if you do time served, how much time do you get, for whatever the crime was? So maybe it's time to, let her out. I have a feeling, though, if they let her out, she's not going to let this go.
Oh, no. I don't think so also. I mean, she's going to fight for this one. And, I'm sure she has her own plans.
She does not seem like the type that is going to let this go. And no. I have a feeling that she's not the type that's going to let Duterte go either without some kind. She's going to continually be outspoken about what happened during the Duterte administration. So I mean, I guess it's up to. I don't think it's so much up to the Marcos administration. I'm sure they have the power to decide.
Yeah, they're gonna. I'm sure they will just say, okay, study the case and see what happened later on. Then maybe she will be released. I mean, maybe they're just waiting for the right time. Anyway. Yeah. All right, let's go to Fidel Palava. The United States backed Philippines in China fishing ban. What do you think of this development?
Well, isn't this an interesting story to come up? That China says, in order to develop and sustain the marine life in the South China Sea, we are putting a ban on fishing there. Okay, that's great and wonderful, but that's like, my backyard, you can't park in my driveway anymore. Wait a minute, that's my driveway. You can't tell me not to park in my driveway. That's mine. You're telling me not to park in my own driveway because you've been parking in my driveway for the last year. So I think that is, part of what the issue is here, that China is saying, okay, the Philippines, you can't fish anymore in this ocean, in this sea anymore, but it's the Philippine Sea. It's, the Hague came out and said, this is the Philippines. Okay, yes, I know Duterte allowed the Chinese to kind of take over it because he didn't want to go to war. But to say you're banning all vessels from fishing there, and it's not really your ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So the U.S. is jumping in, of course. The U.S., any chance they have to jump in on something like this and say, yeah, we're back in the Philippines on this because the Philippines has a right to do whatever they want. If they want to completely decimate the ocean of all the fish, that's their right because it's their ocean.
Yeah. And if they have a problem with fish, I can give them some fish. What do you think?
Go to the store, buy them some fish. But I understand why the Chinese are doing this. They're trying to replenish to make sure that there's not overfishing in the ocean, and that everybody that's fishing seasons. But the fact that they're coming out and not asking the Philippines, that they're telling the Philippines you can't fish here anymore, even though that is supposed to be the area of the Philippines that's under the ownership and under the territories of the Philippines. And the U.S. is jumping in because, let's not forget, last week, Joe Biden made all those comments about Taiwan. And so the Chinese were very upset with that. So I think this is a chance for the U.S. to balance things a little bit by jumping in and backing the Philippines, because there is a big issue that is brewing, and people keep thinking it's not going to happen, but I think it is going to happen. There's a big issue brewing in Taiwan, and this is going to end up being a conflict not between China and Taiwan, but China and the United States.
Well, I hope I'm not praying for any war at all, especially in the Pacific, because we don't need war at this point of our lives. I don't want to see war. We got enough wars as it is, but the issue that's going to be coming down the road in the next couple of years is what side is the Philippines going to come down on? And we know that Marcos has said that he favors China. And I think that is part of the reason why, now here I'm speculating here, part of the reason why the U.S. is jumping to the defense of the Philippines, because when this comes down to it and China finally decides that they're going to have to use military force to make a decision about Taiwan, it's really going to come, the United States is going to jump in and the Philippines is going to have to make a decision on that, on what side they can't play down the middle like they are in the Ukraine. They're going to have to pick one side or the other. Okay. We'll just wait and see, and whatever is best for the Philippines, then we'll stand for it.
Well, what do you think the best is for the Philippines? If that came down to it, if there was a conflict that opened up between China and Taiwan, especially by the fact that, Joe Biden just last week said, if you guys use any kind of military force against Taiwan, we will intervene. And if that happens, what should the Philippines do? Should they stick by their old friends, the United States, or should they, jump ship and kind of move over to China because of what they think that they can get later on from China?
Okay, well, let's wait and see the diplomatic, way on how to handle this issue. And of course, there's some military people who will be involved here. So I don't want to speculate also, and I don't want to say whatever, because now this is not the right time to say about it. Let's make peace.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what is the right time. I think our show is the best time.
Yes.
The World News Jam is the best time to talk about issues like this. But if you want to wait till later, we can continually keep asking this same question as I keep asking it to Lali Tolentino over the next couple of months. as to what side the Philippines should come down on when this conflict happens. And right now, is the Philippines going to adhere to the Chinese ban on fishing? What is the administration going to do in regard to this ban on fishing? Are the Philippine boats no longer going to go into the sea? Are they going to defy it and go in and hope that the United States protects them? How is this going to play out in the next couple of months as China puts this ban on this, the ocean that is under the territory of the Philippines?
Well, I'm sure they have plans. So, wait.
I don't think they do. I don't think there is a plan yet. I mean, this just happened, so I don't know what.
No, I mean the Philippine government. I'm sure they're talking about it. They will not be sitting also and just wait for anything could happen. I'm sure they are thinking of something here.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they're thinking of something like we're trying to think of something. Like everybody's thinking of something now because this just happened, and they can't. I mean, the Philippines can't just stop fishing. So I can't imagine when they put that ban on and they put their Coast Guard ships out there to enforce this ban on fishing. What's going to happen? Are they going to drive the Philippine boats back? Or are they going to ignore them? Is the United States going to bring in their ships? That's a question that we have to ask here on the show because that is the possibility of what may happen.
I assume and predict that they're already talking. And I know they are having plans on this issue. So
right. We will see.
I'm sure.
We will see. But anyway, while they're making their plans and they're working this out, Lolly Tolentino, we will take a break here from the show until next week. But we will be back here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV next Sunday at 7 p.m. with Eric Lecain and Lolly Tolentino. So I hope everybody will join us then, and we can discuss more of your questions, things that are on your mind in the Philippines. So Lolly Tolentino, until next week, we'll see you then. Everybody be very safe out there. See you next Sunday.